Waterfall, the CCW podcast.
Hello and welcome to Waterfall, the water saving podcast, brought to you by CCW. That stands for the Consumer Council for Water. One day we'll explain who CCW are, but to be honest, that'd be a whole episode in itself. So let's just move on quickly. So I'm Mike and I'm here with the guru. It's Karen. Hi, Karen.
Hello, Mike.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
You sound very perky. That's very good. Usually that you have this air of like doom and resignation when you start these podcasts.
Well, we've got guests on, so it's always exciting.
That is true. Now, before we dive into the guests, what's the point of us, Karen?
Well, we're trying to talk about things that we think are going to be really helpful for people. So talking about how we can save water, and if we save water, that we can also potentially save energy, and we can also help to protect the environment. Very good. That is what Waterfall is all about. I think you missed out combating climate change. Well, there's that as well, but, I'm just not sure how much I can squeeze in. Well, what's not to like about Waterfall, apart from possibly the dodgy Scottish host? But, at least Karen, the wonderful Karen, makes up for it, right? So today's topic is nature and the relationship between what we use and the impact that has on the environment. As Karen, as you said, we've got another guest. We are on an absolute roll when it comes to guests. So we've got Alastair Chisholm coming in. He is Policy Director, that sounds special, from CIWEM. CIWEM are the chartered, if you will, I think that means the Queen or the King has done something to them, the Chartered Institute of Water and Environmental Management. So basically he's a water and nature boffin. That's what we need to care about. So he'll be popping in very, very soon. Now notice, Karen, I was very careful with my words. I used the word boffin to describe Alastair, not guru. You happy with that? Does that meet your approval? Well, it's fine by me, but I just hope it's going to be okay with Alastair. Well, so I like the way you've implied there that there's a downgrade, that boffin is not quite as important as a guru. Well, we shall see. We shall see. Don't worry, I won't mention this to Alastair. We like Alastair. Let's not try and offend the guests. Well, maybe not the first time they appear. But, not having two gurus does mean that you can stay for the interview because, if you have a clash in the gurus, it somehow throws the world out of equilibrium. But, a guru and a boffin in the same room is okay. So we will be hearing from Alastair later. Now, you do know that I love getting feedback on the show, and we have had feedback, international feedback, if you will. So we heard from Sabine, who got in touch. She is from Germany. Hello, Sabine, and thank you for listening. See how surprised I am that we've actually got a listener in Germany. Anyway, Sabine flagged something that had been sent around on social media from a German radio station. And a bit of important context is that most of Germany is in drought. So the vast majority of the country is in drought, and it's quite a serious drought. There's been things on the news about that. The rivers are running dry, big rivers, and transport problems because the barges can't go up the Rhine and all sorts. So anyway, so she said something that was put around by SWR, who are a radio and TV station. Heard of them? Not big on our German radio stations and TV? No, very good. Old Tom's getting in there with the German already. Anyway, so she sent something through, which is great, by the way, and it's from social media. So I'm going to read it out. I'm going to read it out in German. So I'm going to apologize in advance to everyone, basically everyone, for this. I do have O-grade German, so Tom, you're under the age of 40. That's like GCSE, or if you're listening in Scotland, that's like Nat 5s. So here is my best German. Here we go. Duschen und pinkeln. Einmal am Tag in die Dusche pinkeln spart rund 2200 Liter Wasser im Jahr. So, Again, I say I'm very sorry. There's lots of people who are listening in Europe going, and that's why Britain's left the EU. Thankfully. and that's the other, this is the reason why we've not made the charts in Germany. And we never will at this rate. So, what does this mean? Any ideas?
Karen?
There was some reference to water in there somewhere.
Yeah, very good. Tom, producer Tom, looks to be cheating with some kind of internet-based device. You're not translating, are you?
No, I was purely making sure I was recorded. Douche, I heard. Some sort of toilet thing in there, I think.
So we've got water and toilet. We're getting warmer.
Oh, God, give us a
warm
clue.
toilet, no.
No, so duschen und pinkeln, that means shower and pee. Pinkeln is pee. So, einmal am Tag in die Dusche pinkeln spart rund 2200 Liter Wasser im Jahr. So that's basically if you pee in the shower once a day, you'll save around 2,200 litres of water in a year. Oh. There you go.
Wunderbar.
Good. Tom, don't build your part up. So, good advice or not? Karen, say nothing. So, I actually think they've underestimated their 2,200 because they clearly have more water-efficient toilets in Germany than they do in the UK. Because if you use one of our older 12-litre water flushes, I did the calculations. You know, I like the calculations. That comes to over 4,000 litres a day. And now, by the way, if everyone in the family did that and saved 12 litres a day, that's almost 50 litres per family. That's about 50 quid a year saving. Wow. So, anyway, have to say I'm fine with having a wee in the shower. Karen, your laughter earlier suggested you may have a difference of opinion on that. So where do you stand then on being in the shower?
Well, we've probably all done it at some point.
You're involuntary.
But I certainly don't make a habit of it.
Tom, where do you stand?
I'm a millennial, Mike. We do it all the time. It's all good.
Okay. So we've got Karen, best avoid. Tom, go for it. And yeah, I regularly have my daily tinkle when I shower.
Moving swiftly on.
Yeah. Okay. Are you sure? Because I would love to stick with showering habits. Anyway, thank you, Sabine, for sending that. I think there's some sage advice. And by the way, if SWB are listening, feel free to plug the podcast. And we're bigging you up. We're sure you're wonderful, whatever you do. So, zooming back in today's topic, which is water and the environment and nature. There's clearly a link between public water supply and nature.
That's right. I mean, the water we use is taken from the natural environment, so from rivers, boreholes, which are sort of wells, or reservoirs. So we've got to make sure that there's enough to go around for people, but we also need to make sure that there's enough left in the environment to look after nature.
Oh, well, that seems really easy then, right? And just on the face of it, make sure we take our fair share, but don't exploit the environment.
I mean, it would be nice if it was that simple. I think the problem is that, the demands for public water supply are increasing and the amount of water that's available to take out of all those sources is reducing because of climate change.
Hold on. So demand increasing, but amount decreasing. That's not a great combo. So I can see why that would lead to some tension. Obviously, we've got a drought on in a moment, and sometimes I recall hearing environmental groups calling for hosepipe bans to be introduced earlier than they were, or in some cases they've still not been introduced. Are they right to call for hosepipe bans to be on earlier?
Well, I think the thing is that at the moment the companies follow their drought plans, and so these are based on the companies' forecasts for what's going to be happening with the weather, their understanding of how their resources respond to those sorts of weather conditions. And it's a constant sort of balancing job. But, with climate change and an increase in uncertainty, we're going to have to keep those plans under constant review. And it may mean that, we will start to see more frequent droughts and restrictions might need to come in earlier than they have done traditionally.
So what you're saying then is companies are following their agreed plans on what to do when the weather's really dry and they're not just making it up as they go along?
No, absolutely.
Enjoying the show? Please consider leaving a 5-star rating on iTunes and Spotify.
So it's great to welcome Alastair Chisholm to the show as a guest. He is a water and environment boffin. So a boffin, Alastair, hello.
Hi, Mike.
meets a guru. Karen, what happens when a boffin meets a guru? Do you have any views?
I guess we can share each other's pain, Alastair.
At least we speak the same language, Karen.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to even comment what that is. Right, the first really tough question for you. Alastair, I've known you for a while, but I've noticed people call you Al. Is Alastair or Al the big question of the day?
Mike, I think you've always called me Alastair. I've in all the time I've known you, I've always thought I'm in trouble. So let's not break with tradition.
Okay, we'll stick with Alastair. Karen, you can call him Al. So look, you know what we're about here at Waterfall. And from your perspective, why bother saving water?
Look, I think we as human beings are innately connected to water, aren't we? Even ourselves, even our own bodies, we're, I think, 80%-ish water. It's absolutely critical to our survival. You don't have to go too long without water before you're in serious trouble. You know, next to air, pretty much. You know, we're stuffed if we don't have it. So it's really, really important just to our immediate health and well-being. But the natural environment also needs water, fundamentally. And I think, you know, as a society, we're increasingly reconnecting with and valuing our natural environment. We see it under growing pressure. We see the strain that it's under. You know, I think it's both immediately important to us and it's really important to the natural environment. I think we think as a society in this country that we live in this really wet country. And I think, it's damp. But we also have a high population density as countries go. So that wetness has to spread around a lot of people to consume it. And, you know, government has asked its infrastructure advisors whether we've got enough water going into the future or whether we're going to need a bit more. And they came back and they said, well, probably by 2050, we need about 4,000 million litres of water a day extra to meet our needs. We've kind of got used to building our way out of these kind of challenges that we see at the moment with climate change and nature pressures and so on. But the further we go into that difficult territory, the harder it gets to build our way out of it and engineer our way out of it. It also gets much more expensive. So it stands to reason that we should actually look at what we're using, whether we're using a bit too much, whether we could easily maintain our lifestyles by using a little less so that we don't have to spend tons more money on building big bits of infrastructure and stuff to keep that supply going when we don't necessarily need all of it. So I think that's why it's important.
So yeah, just a very quick sidebar, because it's very interesting that water is vital for our survival. And so is air. This is what you brought up. So what do you think is taken most for granted? Water, clean water or clean air? Go. Yes or no? Which one? Not yes or no.
Most for granted, I think clean water. We're so used to turning the tap on and clean water. How often in your life do you turn the tap on and clean water doesn't come out? Whereas, you know, you walk out in the street and smelly lorry goes past or car and you kind of think about your air quality. But that really, really, to most people, doesn't happen with water.
Karen, your views?
I think I'd agree. I mean, I think some people are very fortunate that you live in places where you do have access to the fresh air, etc. You know, so you perhaps, you know, take that for granted as well. But I think you're absolutely right, Alastair. I mean, the research that we've done shows that, you know, people do, you know, we all take water for granted. And I think, you know, the problem is we've got into the habit of taking it for granted. So it's, what can we do to kind of make people just stop and think before they turn the tap on, or use that washing machine or dishwasher? You know, it's just about, as you quite rightly said, you know, making some small adjustments, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, you know, that how do we say we're a bit complacent around it now? I think, but it's fair enough, because in Britain, we were the kind of pioneers, or one of the pioneers of clean water and sanitation. We got on that job really early, and so we've had that for a long, long time. But now, with things like climate change, stuff is changing. The landscape is changing, and we've got a whole range of different scenarios that we have to kind of adjust to that just weren't part of life a couple of decades ago. So it is perfectly understandable that we think we can just turn the tap on and it'll always come out. But we're slightly in more uncharted waters now.
No, absolutely. So we hear a lot about, we've got an environmental crisis, water, nature. There are big things going on. And obviously, I suspect you'd agree with that. But what does that mean in a practical sense? Bring that to life. What does an environmental crisis look like to someone who is maybe listening to this going, I hear about it, but I've not really noticed it?
I think this summer was a really kind of in some ways useful wake-up call. So I think the environmental crisis, so what we tend to talk about when we use those words is either climate change or nature decline. On the climate front, so we've seen about just over 1 degree average temperature rise globally so far. And, climate experts and international negotiators, they say we're on course, given what different countries have said they will reduce their carbon emissions to, we're on course for between 2 and 3 degrees. Now, if you bear in mind the heat wave that we saw this summer, and you bear in mind also the Meteorological Office today, I think it was today or yesterday, they released some information about where in the country different heat records have been broken. There were parts of the country that saw their previous records shattered by 6 degrees.
That is mental, isn't it?
So, we used to seeing like a quarter of a degree rise on the previous record or half a degree. 6 degrees, it's absolutely bonkers. And that's just with 1 degree of warming. We get to 3, never mind maybe 4, 5, 6, which is conceivably possible. That's what a crisis kind of looks like. So if you thought that, particularly, if you live down in the south and east of the country where it was really super hot this summer, you think what that felt like, because I think to a lot of people it was shocking just how hot it felt, then potentially that's nothing compared to what's coming. And of course, again, if you're lucky enough to have a garden, look outside the effect that had on your plants and on just the species in your really immediate environment. My garden was absolutely wrecked after, 1 day of really intense heat. And you see some of the pictures of rivers drying up and that kind of thing on the TV over the summer. It's really quite profound. But as I say, it's potentially nothing compared to what could be coming along down the tracks.
No, that really brings it to life. And I think some of the things we saw this summer do act as that wake-up call for us, because it's very easy just to kind of think we live in a wet country, as you said. And just going back to what we saw in the summer, we saw on the TV images of, that were very powerful wildfires. I mean, they were very, very powerful images. And we saw things like fish rescues. Again, I think they're quite shocking when you see these pictures, fish floundering in a puddle that was once a big river. And I'm just trying to link that to public water supply. When you see pictures like that, is that driven by the fact it's just been very dry, or is it driven by the fact we're taking too much from rivers? Are you able to disaggregate that?
So was I a boffin?
You're a boffin. You should know this stuff, by the way. I've often wondered that. You see a fish rescue on the telly, and you go, is that me because we've been drinking too much from public water supply? Or is it just because it's really dry? Would have happened anyway?
I'm guessing it's a combination of the both, isn't it, Alastair?
Did you just say it depends?
No, I avoided saying it depends.
I wasn't totally trying to swerve the question. To be honest, I think it's a really difficult one to answer, in a kind of binary way. So water companies get given a license to take water out of the environment, and it has those licenses. They will let companies take a certain amount out and leave a certain amount back for the natural environment so that those fish, they have enough. That's really important. The problem with that is under drought conditions, water companies can apply to vary those licenses so they can take more out. And obviously under drought conditions, that's when the natural environment is also under most pressure. Public water supply, abstraction for public water supply, is kind of sacrosanct that water companies have a duty, legal duty to ensure a wholesome supply of water to their customers, however that comes, even if they have to tanker it in. The environment under those kind of conditions does come second. And so depending on how bad a drought gets, then yes, it may be that by and large it's public water supply that is having a really big impact. But the rate of evaporation out of water resources and from the soil and so on, that will dramatically increase when you get these really, really hot spells or record dry spells, super dry over a couple of months in the summer. And so it is a combination of lots of different factors. Unfortunately, the point where we need the water the most, that's when the environment needs the water the most. And the more spare water we can kind of try and trap in the natural environment, in things like soils, the more buffer there is before we get to those, harrowing points.
So I heard it once said during the summer, I think, Alastair, this might have even been you, but correct me if I'm wrong, that 1 litre saved from public water supply, 1 litre you save by not using it, is 1 litre back into the environment. Is that true?
I don't remember saying that, but to be honest with you, I think there's a lot of logic in it. So, water companies will take the water that they need out of the environment. With the exception of leakage, they're not taking it out and just giving people what they need and then throwing the rest away somewhere else. Ultimately, if they did throw it away, it would go back into the environment, but maybe not in parts of the environment where it's needed the most. So if you don't use a litre of water coming out of your tap, then the water company doesn't need to abstract that litre. It makes sense to me. And to be honest, as a rule to live by, it's quite a good way of connecting your mindset and your behaviour as a water user with what's happening in the environment. It's a good way to think.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I agree with that, Alastair. I suppose what I was thinking about, and I was interested whether you have a view on this, is whether it then just frees it up for someone else to nick it, someone that's not the natural environment.
Well, there are other legitimate users of water, out there that other than public water supply, really important ones. So farming, energy. And generally speaking, those are the first things that, farming in particular struggled in parts of the country this summer. So we do have to think about what is necessary to kind of keep society functioning and our economy running well. It all helps, to be honest. And so it's not someone else nicking it if you don't use it. It's just a little bit there else to go around. So again, I think it's a good maxim to live by.
I mean, for me, it's a really interesting point because often you hear people say, for example, with so much water lost through leakage, how can the little bit of water that I save make a difference? But I think what we're saying here is, if we're all saving the odd litre here and there collectively, it can make a big difference.
Absolutely, and I agree with both of you guys here on this. By the way, I was just interested whether you had stronger views that there was some other interventions that meant that actually that wasn't the case. So I'm glad to know it's not the case. So that's good. So you've mentioned this already, and we've talked about this on the show a lot, that we're going to see more droughts and extreme weather in the future, and of course population growth. Britain is. Some parts of Britain's incredibly dense population. That's just going to get even more dense. But what needs to be done then to tackle that tension that you've already described, the tension actually, Alastair, between people and nature? How do we ensure that both get what they need, given the pressures on all sides are increasing?
I mean, I think the first thing to say is it is going to get increasingly difficult. it is going to get more expensive. We're going to have to spend money on new infrastructure, on fixing leaks. But I think we can be a lot more creative about how we do store water in this country and in general across the world. So people think about reservoirs and water mains that may or may not leak. You know, that's to a lot of people, that's what water infrastructure looks and feels like when we're talking about water for public supply. It comes from natural river flows as well. It comes from groundwater. So we have a lot of chalk aquifers in this country or sandstone aquifers, which can store large amounts of water, and those can be really, really important. But there's the kind of upstream of that almost, or further up in the air. So in a different part of the water cycle to that, there's other opportunities where we can store water, and particularly around how we manage our land. We don't have a lot of tree and plant cover in this country. We've got rid of most of our trees, and they are really, really good at helping water to soak into the soil where it can be stored. And the soil is like a massive, massive sponge. The amount of water that soils can store. And if those soils are sat over the top of one of those chalk aquifers, then that can potentially help that aquifer recharge more quickly when we have some rainfall, stop it drying out as quickly if the soil above it is wet. That's to do with almost how we're policies that are driving tree planting or how we're farming our land. It's nothing to do with whether or not we've built a reservoir or fixed a leak, but it's all part of the water cycle. And I think we need to think of it much more in terms of this bigger cycle. And of course, we're part of that cycle as well as water consumers. So we talk about saving water. Yeah, that's putting less pressure on that kind of upstream, huge, spongy, planty reservoir thing, of which kind of concrete infrastructure is just actually a pretty small piece. So it's about thinking water in everything we do. Very, very crudely and simply.
I love this. Think big.
Yeah.
Think big. Think upstream.
Massive. Think massive.
No, I love that because people don't see, and it's understandable. People don't see beyond, say, a reservoir, and then we know that winds people up. We know that people find the prospect of a new reservoir being built near them vastly unpopular, which I have to say I do find slightly baffling. But
I love them. Where I live, I can go for a walk, and one of the places I like to go for a walk is around the local reservoirs in North London. You get loads of wildlife around them. Good for recreation. I guess unless you were going to be displaced as a community or something like that, in which case, perfectly understandable. I think there's huge opportunities, and it comes down to how well they've been built. And they can be designed to enhance nature. They can be designed in a way that provides recreational opportunity. Again, I think we just need to be thoughtful how we develop these kind of things.
Yeah, well, I think we've just lost all our listeners from South Oxfordshire now. Oh well. So I've got a couple of extra questions for you, Alastair. Now, you guys at CIWEM, CIWEM, it sounds so posh, doesn't it? CIWEM. You guys produce your own podcast, don't you? Planet Possible, and of which I am a fan. I got hooked last Christmas. I binged on your podcast last Christmas. Do you want to give a quick plug for the great work you do on Planet Possible?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mike. It's a great podcast. It's recently changed to Planet Possible from something that was not half as accessible a name. But really, Planet Possible sums up what it's all about. We try and get on there guests that have really interesting solutions to the environmental pressures that we have. We sometimes get a guru or a boffin.
We've never been invited on, Alastair. I just want to say, neither Karen nor or even producer Tom.
We'll get you on soon. We just have a chat around sometimes what are quite technical subjects, but we try to do it in a way that make those really accessible, even if you don't have a boffin degree or something. And we try and cover all kinds of environmental subject matter. There is a bit of a watery theme running through it, given that we're CIWEM. But yeah, it's all kinds of planetary challenges and all kinds of planetary solutions, and everything's possible on planet possible.
And ever wanting to end on a high note, I mean, are you seeing signs for optimism? I
think we're at a bit of a crossroads at the moment, to be honest with you. I think we know how we can fix a lot of the challenges that we're up against right now. I think it's down to a lot of political will, how much people demand from their local decision makers, your local MPs, that you put, healthy water and a healthy environment really right up the top of their agenda. And, I appreciate that when you've got immediate concerns around cost of living and all of that kind of thing, it's difficult to do. I think specifically on water, there's actually a lot of opportunity to save money. So, there are a lot of win-wins out there when we look at environment, and ultimately our economy is built on a healthy environment. If our environment is not healthy, ultimately our economy will suffer, in the longer term. And there's a lot of us out there who have kids, grandkids, and unless we are pretty ambitious and pretty brave in the kind of, actions that we take, they don't face a particularly brilliant future. So, we can choose to do the brave thing and implement a lot of these solutions, even if they're hard. We kind of know how to do that, or we can choose not to, in which case, yeah, it's not so optimistic.
Well, let's hope people take the right decisions.
Definitely.
What would you like Waterfall to cover next? Send your water-saving topics to podcast@ccwater.org.uk.
So that was Alastair Chisholm. He is what a boffin. Shall we upgrade him to a guru, Karen? What do you think?
Oh, I definitely think he deserves it.
Really? Okay, the jury's out from my point of view. So I did ask Alastair off air how much water he used per day. So what's his personal water consumption? And he came back with a rather impressive 90 litres per day. He then, rather sneakily, tried to downgrade it and say, but he thinks it's even less, because that was based on his last bill. But I'm not taking his revised down figure. I'm sticking with the 90. But that does put him in a good position on our leaderboard, around, I think, where Steve Grevy was, and but miles better than where Andy White was. So, the competition is heating up there.
Yeah, it's making me feel like a bit of an outlier.
Oh, Karen, yeah, I didn't want to go there. I think we'll revisit this later in the year, Karen, and hopefully you'll have, your own water habits will have, perked up a bit. I mean, maybe you could consider saving a flush each morning at the time you have a shower. I can think of a way to do that.
Yeah, I'll bear that one in mind.
So look, we heard a lot today, and Alastair made some really strong points about why we should save water and the impact it has on nature. And I think, for me, what really struck me is just how much water is this shared resource, and it's not just for people to use whatever they like, and that keeping that impact in mind. And I really like that whole, 1 litre saved by using less ourselves is 1 litre back in the natural environment. And that's very, very powerful. What about you, Karen? What struck you from what we just heard?
Yeah, well, I think like you, that was a really powerful point to me, because, as I said, it's one of those things where we tend to think, oh, what difference can I make? But it's what we can all do if we're all trying together and we're all, seeing the part that we can all play.
Now, we're running out of time for this edition of Waterfall, so don't forget you can get in touch like Sabine did. You can get in touch. We've got an email address. It's podcast@ccwater.org.uk. And also don't forget, you can check out all the previous episodes now of Waterfall. They're available from wherever you get your podcasts from. We always love to hear from you. So, some more top tips. I love the shower. I love the shower tip today. It was almost as good as having Alastair in, but not quite. So that's it. That's all we've got time for. So that's goodbye from me, Mike.
And it's goodbye from me.